Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Suburban Saturn. My name is Ed, your eccentric friend until the end. And as always, it is another day in paradise here in sunny Southern California. I've got my little cup of Blue Lotus tea with me today, so grab your favorite drink. Let's have some tea time. Cheers. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about something that's been swirling around the AI, Twitter, and YouTube sphere. The whole OpenAI, oops, we may be exposed more than we meant to debacle that has been happening. So yeah, apparently there has been some OpenAI leakage. That's serious tea time. If you somehow missed it, don't worry. This is not a drama channel. I'm not here to farm outrage. I'm here because that incident accidentally collided with a feature I've been quietly designing for my own project. And it ended up being the perfect case study in what not to do when you're building AI products that touch real people's lives. So, yeah, let's walk through what happened, what I was already building, and what that OpenAI mess basically pushed me to design. And think through. So basically, yeah, I'm developing a new semantic hashing layer for Aurelius. So I guess we can start with opening up with OpenAI, a very short version of the OpenAI thing. So basically, they shipped a feature back, I think it was in the summer, that let people share their chats publicly. So think, here's the interesting conversation I had with a model, let me post it for others. Sounds harmless and cool, maybe even, right? Like a great idea to open source some of the more interesting or engaged conversations people have had with a model to showcase its potential and its capability, right? But the problem was with the metadata within those chats. So basically, when OpenAI enabled this feature, it wasn't just the text of the chat that was floating out there in Google. It was, I guess, in a bunch of cases, there was a lot of metadata associated with some of the content shared in there. So think if you're sharing a picture or a file, it contains metadata there that wasn't, I guess, necessarily accounted for, and basically that led to exposure and self-doxing of who these individuals were. So basically, people's profiles, names, or other identifying details got attached in ways that users didn't originally understand. So what felt like an anonymous prompt sharing very quickly turned into oh shit, I just doxed myself in front of the internet. And pretty fast, OpenAI had to pull that feature and rethink it. So now, I'm not, obviously, I'm not here to dunk on them. If the biggest AI lab in the world can trip over metadata, the rest of us are definitely not immune to messing this thing up severely when we're designing and developing applications that are powered by AI. Yeah, so that's basically why this is interesting. So I guess this ties back to my little corner of Long Beach here, where I've been working on Aurelius and I guess a few new features. If you're new here, basically Aurelius is a tiny anonymous reflection app I built on AWS. This is a little reflection app where people can submit moral, ethical, cultural reflections completely anonymously. We store them, run some light stats just to check the vitals of the application, and then use an AI model to write weekly summarize, I guess, or a narrative that summarizes the posts that have been posted on the application. So it's like a little moral weather station for whoever's using it. Now, in parallel to Aurelius, which is more of like a proof of concept for ethically designed, powered AI apps that touch the inner space. That's quite a mouthful, but the precision matters here. Basically, alongside it, I've been sketching a more personal journaling project application called Karmen. So part of Karmen's design has something called the shadow locker or the shadow realm. And this is a space where people could write private, messy entries and then choose to push them into public, anonymously, of course, if they wanted to. And yeah, So imagine you write a raw entry about shame, jealousy, a fight you had, or whatever that lives in your private journal. But maybe you also wanted to drop a version of that into like a public shadow feed where others can take a glimpse, like the collective could look at the darker, more complicated parts of being a human without knowing it's obviously specifically you. So that's the design problem I've been chewing on for months. It goes way deeper. There are so many elements to consider, but this is just for the sake of this video. That's it in a nutshell. But basically, the design problem is, how do you let people send something from a deeply personal space to a publicly visible space without turning it into like some sort of potential surveillance machine or unintentional doxing tools? Because again, one of the things I'm arguing you have to protect against is that people will use these things in ways that were not intended to be used. And that also means that we have to consider how people may use this to try to dox or try to reverse engineer someone's identity. I guess in an AI-powered era, OpenAI basically shipped a version of that idea at massive scale and tripped on the metadata and then had to nuke it from orbit, the feature. They had to take the feature away because of what happened. So interesting things. I don't know. It, in a very weird way, gave me some sort of space for grace. Like the big players can mess this up. So definitely I'm there's some signal here to what I'm pointing to, right? There is, it's not just something I'm trying to signal for the sake of it, for brand, branding myself like the AI ethics guy, but rather what I'm talking about is taking our times with designing features, because there are ways that will be used could be used at scale unintentionally. And a big player, basically OpenAI, is the dominant player in this space. If they could mess this up, we are pointing or signaling to something right here. So I feel good about taking time thinking through some of these application designs, but I had no idea they had worked on something like that. I thought I was being a little creative in my app by basically creating a feature where something private can be done public, but can be made public. But this is really perfect timing, if you will, because one of the main things that I was afraid of with Aurelius, and this is a reason why it has not gone into production, why I haven't given it a commercial www and share the link publicly, is because I'm still thinking through some of the ways this little tool can go wrong. Now, the ethos behind Aurelius is a little bit more on the cyberpunk side, so definitely minimizing any potential de-anonymization of an individual is my biggest concern with Aurelius, and obviously with any reflection app that's powered by AI and built on a similar framework or even systems architecture. But yeah, with the whole AI thing, of course, it's different because people were sharing, I guess, the OpenAI thing. People were sharing other types of content, not strictly text or textual, but also like files, screenshots that contain metadata, and that data had then extra bits that basically were like breadcrumbs that can help people de-anonymize the other individuals. So it's like you thought you were handling someone's like photocopy of a diary page, and instead you gave them the diary with the home address and a little GPS tag, like one of those little Apple GPS tags, all in one. So in any case, that little hiccup actually, well, it was great, because again, the ethos of Aurelius is very cyberpunk, to be a public tool that cannot harm the public in any way. That's AI powered. But I definitely don't want identity leakage, which is a big reason why I opted for no logins in the Aurelius concept. It's like, this is one less headache for me. No accidental doxing, and or people realizing too late that their anonymous post was not nearly as anonymous as people thought. So as I was reading through the OpenAI thing, an article on it, I got an idea for semantic hashing. So solution, I think that will be the catalyst for me finally feeling comfortable with launching Aurelius into production. And so with this new design approach, my hope is to get it done as quickly as possible, and with YouTube as my witness, to be done with it by March and released. But this idea of semantic hashing, for I guess just to get into it, is a phrase, I guess a practical. The core idea, I guess, is before any reflection leaves the private space and enters the public feed, we run it through a transformation that keeps the emotional core, keeps the moral tension, but scrambles any personally identifiable information or identifying information, details, etc. So instead of just trusting the user to manually anonymize their story, some people may not. Some people will probably accidentally leave people's names or leave some sort of information behind which can de-anonymize others. And I have a very specific example existing in Aurelius right now, and I'll get to that at the very end. But basically, instead of trusting people to sanitize basically and not accidentally dox someone through text, which is really tough when you're dealing with feelings, we kind of lean on the model to help us with that. And in practice, both Aurelius and Karmen, I would imagine it looks something like this. You write your raw, honest entry, right? I was upset at so-and-so. You send, and they'll probably be in Karmen a send to public, or in Aurelius it would go through the initial moderation pass. The system runs a pass on it, and it will strip any name, any location, and any super specific details. Maybe it'll rewrite the text as well to keep the meaning but blur the edges, and then publishes the transformed version to the public feed. So basically, any posts you put in there will be transformed by the AI to remove any potential information that may be pointing at someone's real identity, or getting wildly close to de-anonymizing someone publicly, right? Like giving someone's phone number. So any phone number that you put in there, even if it's a full fake number, the system will automatically just transform that regardless. So it doesn't have to worry about ever potentially leaking real information. And then legally and categorically, any information that does resemble anything in real life would be strictly can be categorized as a hallucination of the AI, and you're no longer legally liable for it, which is a separate story. But anyways, most importantly, the public record is a transformed blob, not your raw journal. And it's like having an automatic scrambler for your confessions, and the moral texture stays, the story shape stays, but the link back to you as a person becomes very hard to reconstruct. It is not perfect. There's no perfect, no major company, even in the digital infrastructure space like AWS, will ever guarantee you perfection 100%. They actually flex their muscles by showing you how many nines they have following their 99.9999 or 99999% accuracy. But even then, they do not guarantee perfection. It's basic. There's no perfect system, in other words, but this is a million times better than just click, share, pray, and hope that metadata behaves or that individuals behave. So at the very least, the Aurelius cyberpunk ethos, this is as stupid proof as you can possibly get in the age of AI at the moment. But and no one's stupid here. I'm just saying, by accidentally doxing yourself, it wouldn't even matter, because this thing would already scramble all that information anyways. And and again, I don't know if I should share this yet, but what has this taught me about building AI products? So for me, this whole OpenAI episode plus my own shadow locker design has turned into a little manifesto moment. We cannot keep operating on the move fast and break things when the things are people's inner lives. You don't want to break someone's psyche, their inner life, their personal space, not with AI tools, not at least without an understanding of its design and what it's optimizing to do, and without using it, knowing that it is just a cognition tool rather than a something to outsource your final judgment to. If you're building AI powered tools to deal with journals or reflections or mental health adjacent contents or anything confessional, you can't just focus on the model. You really have to obsess over how the metadata travels with the content, how easy it is to de-anonymize someone, and what the worst case misuse looks like if someone bad gets their hands on the data. Aurelius has always lived inside an ethical design frame for me, but this incident sharpened it. Anonymity isn't a cute aesthetic choice, but rather a protection, a shield against ruining people's lives in the age of AI. Public features should default to privacy and not just vibes. And any shared mechanics needs to be built in a safety layer, not just the checkbox. And so, yeah, I'm still working on my projects. This is basically sharpening my thinking. I don't know. I've got new features on the roadmap to update Aurelius and Karmen. I'm still really trying to. Karmen right now is kind of going through more of a market product fit, and Aurelius is like its skeleton. And it's cyberpunk skeleton and ethos, but then Karmen will be the body built on top of that. But basically, I've got a whole new feature roadmap now. The semantic hashing layer gave way to a whole new idea of how to treat Aurelius, which moves it away from being just an AI powered reflection app now to a basically allegorical, I guess, an allegorical and myth maker based on reflections that are, moral, ethical, or difficult in nature. So think of it as like we're building our modern day scriptures. When people interpret the Bible, or when people interpret, whatever doctrines they read to connect with their own spirituality and then abstract moral frameworks from that, they're normally interpreting a story, and that story sometimes isn't necessarily explicit about the good or the bad. Sometimes it kind of is, and then you'll still have semantic arguments around the whole, well, was it really bad? Well, this was context dependent. They were only talking to A people of A time. So anyway, so this whole OpenAI and semantic layer hashing basically made me think a little bit more sharply, because someone has submitted a reflection. It's kind of perfect timing. Someone not too long ago, maybe last week, submitted a reflection into Aurelius. I've been sharing this privately with a few people, and I have no idea who it was, but basically the reflection mentioned something about a matcha shop specifically in Long Beach. So that already narrows it down drastically, right? And they mentioned that this particular matcha shop had been pitching or marketing itself as a I don't know, I guess it was using a story of I guess the owner's deceased partner as a way to market or give the marketable story or narrative around the shop. So if basically they were saying, hey, this matcha shop story was that it opened up after so and so died, and in honor of so and so, now we're serving up matcha for the community because it was her favorite drink. Come enjoy a drink with us, right? Which is, I guess, the reflection was mentioning something along the lines of them feeling weird, strange, not entirely sure how morally. Basically, they were saying it's a little sus, right? It's interesting, but the issue now is that I was able to find that matcha shop in Long Beach just based off of that information, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to accidentally dox people, because even if someone in Long Beach is using that application and sees it, and then, for whatever reason they stumble upon that shop. It's the public. We don't know what they might do. We don't know how they might treat other people. So we just, again, want to minimize this sort of engagement and this sort of risk as much as possible. So a big reason, again, why I hadn't launched Aurelius into production was because this kind of was the missing link. The semantic hashing will protect us from worrying about comments or metadata or anything that might be personally identifiable, and the anonymizing of an individual will basically be handled by AI and scrambling it. And then we abstract the details, keep the core events, but maybe blur the details of the story. Instead of a matcha shop, it's a wine bar. Instead of a dead girlfriend, it's a dead matriarch. It really will be context dependent, and then our narrative feature will change from just summarizing reflection posts to actually developing and creating allegorical stories based on the sentiments expressed on the reflected post. So a user will grab the post, they'll say whatever they want to say, their raw text will be transformed into a different kind of blurred story so that we don't accidentally leak any personally identifiable information for anyone. And then that gets posted instead. And then at the top, you can use the narration to go ahead and create an allegorical narrative meant to be interpreted as scripture, as you would interpret a story like Cain and Abel, or if you have a different, tradition, that as well. So hope all that makes sense. That's it for this video. I just kind of wanted to keep it easy. I will have a paper on this as well. I already have a paper on Medium that I posted here earlier about designing like it matters. Basically, this is just more this whole OpenAI leakage thing is just emboldening that case even more. It's basically saying, hey, we're onto something here when we're thinking through these things. We're not just trying to, be wankers and have strange intellectual urges to just talk at people online. It's a real, it's going to be a real problem. So basically a lot to think through, new features, which is exciting for me. I will provide more writings on this, and I'm excited to actually share updates now of transforming Aurelius into an actual cyberpunk oracle for the modern age that will basically derive myths and allegories from people's internal and inner turmoils. So yeah, a lot to think through and work through. But that being said, thank you all for joining me. I love you all wherever you are, sending you the highest vibes, want you all to succeed in life. And thank you for sharing this time and space with me.